Okay, I hear it. Hello, hello, hello. All right, we're good. It says we're good to go. Okay, so we're gonna record. I think we're already recording. I don't even want to go into it. The shit that you just go through, you know, freaking technology when it works, it's just like, yes. Eclipses. Eclipses for 2024. I'm going to do a quick rundown. I know the word quick and G, they just don't usually go in the same sentence, but I know that eclipses tend to be complicated because they're really chocked full of stuff, right? Between the nodes and whether it's lunar and solar and what does that mean and what is the significance of the node. And then we have to discuss the sign that the eclipse is in. So there's a lot to what do they say? Unpack. There's a lot to unpack. So this video is going to tell you the eclipses for the year of 2024. And I'm going to tell you the degree, the dates, and the sign that they're in. Okay. I'm also going to say, of course, whether it's a south node or a north node eclipse. But that's all I'm going to do in this video, right? It'll be a part 2, and then the part 2 will gently take us into the deeper dive parts of those specific eclipses in the months that they occur in on those dates. Okay, so this video is what is going to kick off our eclipse season for 2024. So the first one on my list is March. March of 2024. We're looking at the 25th of March. We're having a south node lunar eclipse, and it's at 15 degrees and 34 minutes in the sign of Libra. All right. So I'll repeat that. March 25th, we are having a lunar eclipse, 15 degrees, 34 minutes in the sign of Libra. And yes, that is a south node eclipse. So for those of you who know what some of those things already mean, you can start dissecting this already, especially if you have your chart. And for those of you who don't have your chart, like if that's something you want, so when you're listening and following along, you can have your chart at home to look at it and be like, oh shit, do I have something at these degrees in this sign, right? If you want that, comment to me and I'll help you out in any way I can. All right. Second eclipse for 2024 is in April. Remember, eclipses normally come in pairs. Every blue moon, well, maybe more often than a blue moon, but every once in a while, you'll see that they come in threes. You're right. It's not typical. It's not typical. So this year, we're only having 4 eclipses the whole year, which means the normal or the typical 2 eclipses back to back, which is part of that lunar cycle, right? So new moons and full moons is how we understand the eclipses. It's that same cycle. I know that's confusing. As a quick example, that last eclipse I spoke about, the lunar eclipse, when you hear me say lunar, we know that means moon. Therefore, it's a full moon eclipse. You following along now? You got it? All right. So now this one, April 8th, 2 weeks after the 25th. You follow? Because it was a full moon. So if it's happening 2 weeks after, and remember, these cycles, these lunar cycles happen, they're normal. This happens all the time. It's the difference of them being an eclipse that doesn't happen necessarily all the time, although they are normal to happen within a year. There's always a minimum of 4 eclipses a year. That is totally normal, okay, or typical. So for April 8th, we are having a solar eclipse, which you probably would have guessed, right? Because we just had a lunar eclipse, a full moon. So after a full moon, the next big phase in a full moon cycle would be when it becomes a new moon, when it starts all over again. So before I go deeper, this is a solar eclipse in Aries. This is April 8th. It's at 19 degrees and 24 minutes. I know a lot of people. This degree, 19 degrees, is a big deal. Stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to explain a couple of things quickly, and as concisely and clearly as I can to go over the orbs. Okay, because for those of you who are following along and have your charts, right? So again, That April eclipse is on the 8th. It's a solar eclipse in Aries. It's at 19 degrees and 24 minutes, and that makes it a north node eclipse. All right, next eclipse doesn't happen until September. September. Keep September in your mind, folks. I don't want to go too deep because I have to keep reminding myself. So you're going to hear me saying this out loud to myself. Don't go too deep. That was the promise at the beginning. But I know September is key because I've already, I've been looking at Pluto's cycle, and I know Pluto spends the majority of 2024 in the sign of Aquarius. But in September, it's already begun its retrograde to enter back into the sign of Capricorn. Yeah. Doesn't stay there long, but it does go there. So that's government. That's government, big business, right? That's a big deal. Wealth, lots of power and money. Anyway, so now September 17th, we are having a lunar eclipse, and it's in Pisces at 25 degrees and 40 minutes. All right. So September 17th, lunar eclipse in Pisces, 25 degrees, 40 minutes, and that is a north node eclipse. All right, next one, October. And so it's October 2nd. And yes, this is 2 weeks later because it's following the moon cycle, right? That cycle, that 28-day cycle, right? So like every 14 days, there's either a beginning or an ending to something. You see? You get it now? Like that's just the full moons and the new moons all the time. And so this eclipse, I'm sorry, the last eclipse, I know I didn't say the word full moon, but you heard me say lunar, right? Remember? So in your brain, if you didn't click, that's my reminder to tell you, yes, that lunar eclipse was a full moon eclipse, the one in September. So the one in October, 2 weeks later, is going to be a new moon. Right, right. So when I say solar, that means new moon. Right. So a solar eclipse, and it is in Libra, and it is at 10 degrees and 3 minutes. All right. So to repeat that, October 2nd, we are having an eclipse in Libra at 10 degrees and 3 minutes. This is a solar eclipse. And yes, that's a south node eclipse, south node solar eclipse. All right. 10 degrees, 3 minutes. Now, the little piece that I wanted to talk about as far as the orbs. Some people say that for them, um, well, how about we back up? Orbs. What the hell does that word mean? It just means space. It's just another word of saying space. And I don't mean space as in the final frontier. I mean space as in the distance. You get it? So the distance. How about that? I should use that word. Think of a ruler, right? So if I were to show you a ruler, matter of fact, I have one here somewhere. I mean, I'm in a room with 1,000 rulers. Anyway, there's one hanging up over there. I'll leave it there. If you look at a ruler or whatever you have, let's say that the first eclipse, March 25th, 1534. So let's say 1534 is right where this white line is. Can you see the beginning of that white or that silver thing? I'm sorry, on your end. Yeah. So we'll say the 1534 is right there, right at the tip of this. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to give this an orb, which is the distance of 2 degrees, because the eclipse happens at 15 degrees. So it's going to be a positive and a negative of 2 degrees. So that means 2 degrees either way. So for the orb, then we're going to say in your chart, see if you have anything at 1334 to 1734. So I gave a 2-degree orb, which means I expanded the window, the distance of how you could be affected in your chart. So if you don't have something spot on at 1534, then you're looking, do you have something at 14? Do you have something at 13? Do you have something at 16? Do you have something at 17? Did that make sense? All right. So that's the orbs. It means the distance. And the reason we do that is because whether it's an eclipse or whether it's just a regular full moon, usually the events in general, unless there's like a whole lot of things piled up there, right? Then many times we will say, you might hear some people say, well, I can do an orb of like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 degrees even. I'm really sensitive. So I'm aware of it long before it actually, like, the event happens or the date of it. And that's for you to figure out in your own chart, in your own life. And the only way you can figure that out is by raising your own self-awareness. That's it. That's all, folks. You got it. The Aries eclipse at 1924, 2-degree orb. We're going to say the same thing. So, actually, I do want to. I want to make a quick mention here. This orb is probably bigger for this eclipse. It's going to be bigger, and I say this in particular for folks who live in the United States, because this eclipse is conjunct the United States Chiron. Yeah, that's a wound from a long time ago. And if it's Aries energy, it has to do with my appearance, could have to do with my head and injuries to my head. It could deeply emotional wounds. So we think of people who, if they don't have, if they're not white, right? If you're not male and if you don't have white skin, you could understand all too well some of the injustices, some of the inequalities that you have lived through. And I can say that really confidently because at the opposite sign of Aries is Libra, which is equality. You see how that works? So for the orb on this eclipse, the Aries one at 1924, we're going to expand that one a bit because there's major things here. There's already, for folks who are living in the United States natal Chiron in their birth chart, a deeply, deeply intense wound from the past is already a trigger point. It's already a natural trigger point. Okay. So so that means we got two things then. That means we got the sun and the moon solar eclipse are going to be on top of the United States Chiron, right? So I'm going to expand this a 4-degree orb either way is what I'm expanding this to. Okay. So it doesn't mean that that can't be doable for where you live in your country, wherever you watch from. You would have to know your country's birth chart or even your own birth chart to see if you already have something at those degrees. All right. So I'll give an example. In addition to this, other than the United States Chiron, I know someone who has something right here at this degree. Maybe not down to the minute, but they got something right here. So for them, they're going to notice it. It's going to be a bigger effect, and I would give a bigger orb. So that means we're doing the 4-degree orb, and that would be 4 degrees before and 4 degrees after. So for the Aries, we're going to say 1924 again. We're going to say it's right there at the beginning of that silver part on the clip, right there. So 4-degree orb, we're going to back it up to 4, which is 1534 in Aries. And then we got to go 4 the other way, right? So that's 2334 in Aries. Do you have anything within that range of 15? Is that right? 15? Yeah, 1534. I heard a noise outside. It was, yeah, had to make sure. 1534 of Aries to 23 degrees in Aries. It's 2334, which technically, well, we'll get into those details in another video, but that's a bigger orb. Okay. And so for that person who's got that bigger orb, and even in the United States, remember, folks, when you have things that match exactly or within that orb, the changes that the eclipse power brings, the moon cycle, it's not like, crazy stuff, right? Because the moon cycle, well, the ocean's tides move by the moon. So we can see it. We can't be like, oh, that's just, that's just, what do they call that? Bubblegum science or some shit. No, like this is a real thing that we actually can physically see. And at times it can cause a problem, right? You have higher tides. If you've had heavy rains, those higher tides can cause a real problem and flooding in areas. So, yeah, anybody who lives, with the land and pays attention to it, they're very, very much aware. Farmers, very, very much aware of the cycles. And so, pay attention to those things for you in your own world, and see if it makes sense for you. Like, instead of just listening to me or anybody else that you hear, oh my God, everybody's got an opinion, everyone's got the truth. Figure it out for yourself And then let me know. Yeah, absolutely. Let me know. Or even in this video right here, right now, let me know what you think about what I'm sharing. So for that eclipse, a 4-degree orb, specifically for folks in the US and for wherever you're living, if you've got something, let me know. Or if your country does, if you've got something at those degrees. The next eclipse in the Pisces one in September, 25 degrees, 40 minutes. Off the top of my brain, nothing is coming in right now, and I don't know anything. So we're going to give that a 2-degree orb. Although we might be able to give it even another 2-degree orb added. I'm just realizing it's Pisces, so it's high levels of sensitivity because that's Pisces. So you could even say 2740, using that same example, right? We could go backwards. Or I'm sorry, we can go to 2340 to 2740 in Pisces. You got it? 2340 to 2740 in Pisces. So a 4-degree orb for that one as well. The next one in October in Libra energy, it's in Libra. It's at 10 degrees. Nothing is popping in. So we're just going to say a 2-degree orb for right now, and I'll do a deep dive video on each particular eclipse because we have to go over the meanings of all the signs. Okay, the meanings of all the signs. We have to go over whether it's a north node, a south node. So I got to take that apart, and then yeah, the dates, the degrees, and where Mercury will be, who's the ruler of those particular eclipses based on the planets, and where they're going to be at what sign. You see, there's a lot to go through. So we'll save that for the part 2 of the eclipses 2024. Until then, Happy New Year. Bye-bye.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.